This is the second of the two 1909 panoramas. This one came in 4 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, but you can see we've been able to join them back pretty well. Lots of detail in this picture. So apart from looking at Hong Kong Island here, we also have a chance to look over the far side along the edge of Kowloon there. Anyway, we'll start off with the mid-levels. Not much to see until we come to the British Military Hospital here above Bowen Road. We saw it in the last video. We saw it from the sea that time, and this is the view from behind. It was just above Bowen Road, so we get to see Bowen Road coming around the hillside here. Coming closer. This is about the junction with the road up to Magazine Gap. Magazine Gap Road winding up here, heading up the hill, which means that this is the building called the Firs. And looking at this picture, I see it had a flag flying in the garden, so I wondered if perhaps it was the residence of a consul. Back to Bowen Road, I think we mentioned last time, really an aqueduct more than a road, bringing water around from the reservoirs at Tai Tam to the filter beds here. So the idea is the water flows into the filter beds, it's cleaned, and it ends up down in the reservoir here, and then from this reservoir it flows down into the pipes and the taps of the buildings down in central and mid levels. Each filter bed has a layer of sand at the bottom. You can see an example of that here. Now, when I first read about filter beds and sand, I imagined that the sand acted as a mechanical filter, so that as bits of debris in the water or mud or whatever would get trapped by the layer of sand and the clean water would come out the other side. And that's part of the story, but that wouldn't make the water suitable for drinking. So what also happens is that a film of bacteria, good bacteria, forms across the top layer of the sand here. And as the water flows through, that good bacteria sort of digests the bad bacteria, and the water that comes out the other side is clean. Over time, the sand gets clogged up and the filters sort of slow down the rate of water they produce. And so what you have to do then is come in, clean off the top layer of sand, and then let it, they call it ripen, let it develop that healthy bacteria, and then it's good to go. You can do that a few times and then you end up with just no sand left, and then you have to put in a whole new layer of clean sand. So we can see a couple of the beds are being worked on. You can tell because they've got the ramps going down into them, and this one in particular. So you can see they're working. Not quite sure if they're just doing one of those sort of intermediate, strip the top layer off, or if this is a full-on replace all the sand. You can see piles of sand stored around the edge of the filter beds here. What else have we got? Just below Bowen Road, we've got the artillery officers' mess buildings. We talked about those last time. Then down the hill, we've got McDonald Road. And below that, we've got Kingsclere with a nice big tennis court in the garden there. Kingsclere was above Kennedy Road, which we can see here. So I think this will be the bridge where the peak tram crosses over Kennedy Road. That means Union Church should be close by, but in this picture all we get to see is a peep of its spire poking out above Kingsclere. Most of the buildings in this area below Kennedy Road are military. These are all the different barracks and soldiers' accommodation. Different building here though, this was their racket court. Racket is a precursor to the game of squash that gets played today. And whether by chance or by planning, I'm not sure, but today if you go to the Hong Kong Squash Centre, then that's built just about on the site of these old racket courts here. Here's the roof of the Albany. The Albany looked out over the botanical gardens and then down to the governor's residence with the governor's ballroom next door. See St. John's Cathedral there. And 3 more buildings that we saw in the previous panorama. Here's the Roman Catholic Cathedral with its bell tower. Here's the prison. Then right over at the left edge, it's a very grand building. This is Sir Paul Chater's Marble Hall. Get a good view of the house there and the fantastic view that he had out over all of Central. Now, of course, most of these buildings are long gone, but I did find one that still survives, and that's Western Market over here on the seafront. Now, there's such good detail in these pictures that we can look away into the distance. We can see Stonecutters Island and something beyond. To get a better idea what we're looking at, I'm going to open up a map, and to do that, I'm going to use the HK Maps website. It's a great resource if you're interested in old Hong Kong, and in particular, I know there's a 1913 map which covers the area we're looking at and is close enough in the time that it'll be a good resource for us. So let's take a closer look. The photographer then was somewhere around here on the hills above Central, and we're looking out to the north. We've got Stonecutters Island here. And here it is in the picture. So Stonecutters Island, a popular destination around this time. If you needed to go for a swim and you didn't have a lot of time. So chatting with Barbara Anslow several years ago, she remembered that in the 1920s, that's when she was a young girl here in Hong Kong, every Tuesday and Thursday after office hours, she said there'd be a launch that would take people over to Stonecutters if you wanted to go for a swim. Now there's something we can see in the distance as well. There's not a lot of construction on this distant shore, but there's definitely something here. And if we come back to our map, we can see we're looking at Lai Chi Kok. So this is a bit of newly reclaimed land here. It's owned by the Standard Oil Company. You can see their oil tanks just over here. This land is the site for Mei Foo today. The Mei Foo housing estate is built out here. And then up the slope a little bit, we can see a line of rooftops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're shown on the map as well. There's some more coming down the hill. They're not quite so clear to see. These buildings, they've had lots of different uses over the years. They were built, I think, about 1904, so just a few years before this picture was taken. And originally they were built as temporary accommodation for Chinese labourers who were passing through Hong Kong to board ships that would take them abroad to work. Only lasted for a couple of years. Around this time, 1 year later, 1910, then the site opens as a quarantine station, and then it's used as a prison, and then as a hospital for many years. And in fact, the buildings are still standing today, and they are now home to the Jao Tsung-I Academy. And it's open to the public, and it's worth a visit. It's a pretty spot to have a wander around. Next, we've got one of those place names that doesn't seem to make any sense until you look at it on one of the old pictures. So if you go to this area today, it's still called Cheung Sa Wan, which is of the long sandy bay. And you'd struggle to find any sand there today. But in the picture here, you can see, yes, exactly, it was a long sandy bay running all the way around, coming back into construction up here, and then some more oil tanks, which we can see on the map here. So this is the area around Tai Kok Choi, and not a very good view, unfortunately. I'd like to get a clearer view, but this was Cosmopolitan Dock behind here. Now, if we look to the right, we should see an inlet here. It looks like a shallow bay. Indeed, we can see that there. And then looking up on the hill in the distance, there should be a building with a peak above it. So here's the building, here's the peak. And today it's the site of the old reservoir, where there's those lovely, beautiful arches inside. And it's another site that's worth a visit. You've probably got a book, but this time of year when the weather's cool would be a great chance to go and visit that. Carrying on south then, we come past Mong Kok, come past Yamate, and then we come to these great big buildings, big white roofs. Can't say I've either seen them or I haven't paid attention to them in the past, but they're quite big, and it's their line of coal sheds shown on the map here. So it's easy to overlook just how much effort was spent moving coal around the world. You know, all of the industrial sites using it, all of the boilers on the ships using it. So you spend a lot of time keeping yourself fueled with coal. Carrying on south, we should come to the jetties or the piers of the Kowloon Wharves. There they are. And then as we reach the bottom of the peninsula, a much smaller pier here, shown on the map here. It's a pier for another ferry over to Central. This is the Star Ferry. This is a much older one than the pier we see today. The current pier bigger and a bit further to the south. This section here is about to undergo huge changes. At the moment we've got a collection of warehouses and one sort of larger office building here. But the railway is coming. So remember, this is 1909. By the time the 1913 map is drawn, the railway is in place. But at this time, it's just in its temporary location, temporary route. So for a time, they just ran the rails along Salisbury Road here and kept these older buildings. But eventually, this will all be cleared away, and sort of the full layout can be completed. I know if we skip ahead here to a bit of a later map, we can see how that looks. Not that one. Yes, this is the one. So here, 1920. So the rails have moved south. The proper railway terminus building has been built, and then the big bus terminus is this big open area on the left here, and you can see the pier has been changed as well now. Terminus building all gone, of course. All that's left is the clock tower that stood at the corner here of the terminus. What else have we got? More piers down here. These are the Holt's Wharf, and then behind that we've got Signal Hill with the Time Ball Tower up on top. On the left, big reclamation off Chatham Road, and part of this land will be used to run the railway along. And then in the distance here, all this housing over here, this is all at Hong Kong. And most of the people who lived in these houses would have family connections to the dockyards over here, so the big dock just here. Now if we look further away, not much to see. Not a lot of life going on over there. You can see a few little scattered settlements. But there is a note on the back of the photo. The owner has put a little note there which says the site of the volunteer camp 1909. He's just made a mark about here. So the volunteers, they were the local militia, and they had regular training sessions and a longer annual camp. And previous years, they'd always gone to Stonecutters Island for their camp. But in 1909, for the first time, they tried having a camp up here at Customs Pass. So that's what that was all about. It was held in mid-October. As we say, not much else to see here. So let's come back to Hong Kong Island, but down at the shoreline, and we join Hong Kong back at North Point, a very sort of empty and rural looking North Point. Let's just expand the picture again. So not much in the way of buildings here, but again, we've got oil tanks, and these oil tanks are connected to the sea via the jetty over here. Now, if you remember a couple of weeks back, we looked at a view of the typhoon shelter in Causeway Bay, and the photographer was standing on the seafront with a bit of a sort of ratty old pier just to the side. So I think the photographer would have been standing about here, and here's the old pier, and here's the sea wall of the typhoon shelter. So into Tin Hau along Causeway Road, and that brings us to East Point, which at this time was quite an industrial area. You can see by all the chimneys around here. This is back to the seafront, and this would be Hennessy Road today. And when this picture was taken, we can see three of the old style trams, so the single-story trams, single-deck trams, running along the tram line here. As we say, Hennessy Road up till here, and then this is the junction, so Hennessy Road carries on straight, and this turns into Johnston Road today. And Johnston Road, another corner here. This is the junction with Wanchai Road, and this is where the old Wanchai police station stood. Turning back to the harbour for a moment, the notes on the back, the little handwritten notes, the owner of the photo only chose to note 3 different ships out of all the many in the harbour that day. Here's the first one. He writes USA Gunboat Helena, and in fact he highlighted this on the previous picture as well. The second one is another military ship, this one here. He writes HMS Tamar, receiving ship where the typhoon signals are hoisted. And then the last one is away. This is the man of war anchorage, so all of the military ships are here. The third one is off to the left, and it's this one here. And he writes CRR Empress boat. I think he means CPR, the Canadian Pacific Railway named their liners the Empress of something. So I think this is one of their ships. Let's come back onto the island and into Central, and in particular Pedder Street, because there are 3 large construction projects at different stages of their process here. So down on the seafront between Devoe Road and Connaught Road, this is the General Post Office taking shape. The old General Post Office is this building here, so you can see it's going to be a much larger building when it's finished. On the opposite side of Devoe Road, we've got the new Jardine House. This one just about finished. You can see there's still got the scaffolding up. There's still a construction ramp here, and there's still a temporary building on the roof, but most of the big work has been done. Then down at the south end of the Pedder Street, down by the old clock tower, the southern wing of the Hongkong Hotel is being rebuilt, and this one at a much earlier stage, so you can just see the girders for the new construction, but it does at least give you a bit of an idea of the shape. It's going to be a tall section here and then a lower section out here. The hotel had a north wing and then a central section, so these had been redeveloped quite a bit earlier, and then there was a much older section left here, and that's finally been replaced when this picture was taken. Now these buildings will be useful also to give us an idea of when the 2 panorama photos were taken. If you look at the back of each of the panoramas, they both say November the 4th, 1909. But it's easy to see that can't be true. Let me just compare the 2 pictures. So here are the 2 panoramas, and the first thing that struck me was that in this photo the harbour was quite empty compared with a very sort of packed harbour in this picture. So it didn't feel like they were taken at the same time, and we can get a sort of more firm evidence of that if we look down into the dry dock area of the naval dockyard. Let's find it on this one as well. And in particular, I'm looking at this shed on the western side. So here it's under construction, still got scaffolding all over it, but in the other picture you can see it's clearly finished. All the scaffolding is gone, and there's also this new structure going up here. Not sure what that's going to be, but no sign of it over here. There's more evidence in the distance. So this is the retaining wall above the filter beds. Remember, we got a very close-up view of them in this picture. So here's the retaining wall here, and it's looking in pretty bad shape. And there's a ramp being built up, I guess, to give access for construction workers to come and make that look better. And in this picture, indeed, no sign of the ramp, and it looks like fresh concrete here, much lighter color. So that's the first thing then, that the two pictures were taken at different times. As to when exactly, well, let's come back down to Pedder Street. So there's a very useful document put out each year by the Public Works Department. They put out their annual report, and it's mostly about government work, but they would also give updates on progress of any large private projects. Looking through the 1908 report, we find the reconstruction of the southern or old portion of the Hongkong Hotel was begun, the demolition of the old buildings being completed, and foundations for the new building, which is to be of steel frame construction, begun. Now we're clearly a lot further on than that description, so we must be sometime past the end of 1908, sometime in 1909 or even a bit later. If we switch then to the 1909 report, they say that Messrs. Jardine, Matheson and Company's new premises in Pedder Street were completed in September. So the photo must have been taken sometime before September, because it's not finished here, but it's almost finished, isn't it? So I'm guessing the picture here was taken probably around mid-1909, and then the view from the harbour, this one over here, taken just a little while later. I guess the owner likely wrote the notes for each photo on the 4th of November 1909, not the date when the pictures were taken. That would kind of fit. That's just a few weeks after the volunteers camp, which was in mid-October, while it would be fresh in his mind. Well, if you've made it this far, thank you. The next photos I've got ready to look at are simpler scenes, so they should be shorter videos. I'll put a bunch of links down in the video's description in case you'd like any more information about any of these topics. And also, if you've got volume 1 of my books, you might want to have a look at the photos on pages 74 through to the end of the book. They're a sequence of views that are similar to this one, views looking out over central towards Kowloon. And they just show how the view changed over the years. So they start off with a picture taken in the 1880s, and there's a whole sequence. The last one in the sequence is from the 1960s. My thanks again to Joe for donating these photos, and thank you for watching. Thank you very much.